Welcome back to the DLE Own It podcast. This episode features participants across the country joining the Friday Culture Chat, sharing stories from their personal and professional lives regarding making negotiations, acknowledging your worth, and knowing when to walk away. This is Let's Make a Deal: How to Negotiate with Confidence.
Today, we're covering negotiations, whether it be salary, promotions, business contracts, or others. For many, negotiating is an incredibly difficult thing to do for one reason or another. Some may have never been taught how to in school, and others may simply feel uncomfortable having that sort of conversation with a higher up at work. Personally, I can say that in my first job, the conversation wasn't even there, and I wasn't even aware that a negotiation was an option when it came to the terms of my job. And I feel I lost out not only on money, but also a potential opportunity to lay down ground rules of how I want my future workplace to look like. In today's conversation, we're going to be talking about all of these things, how some people have done it well, and how in some circumstances we'd wished we'd had a little more help.
I can jump in to start. So just to kind of give context, I've only worked for one employer. I came straight out of college, started working for General Dynamics Mission Systems here in Pittsfield, and I went through a leadership program here at our company and kind of worked my way, and I just took a job as a manager in our IT department. So that's kind of a little bit about me. And I've only worked for one employer ever. So when I was coming out of college, I, much like Cooper, had no idea that negotiation was a thing that I could do, or how I would do it if I knew that I could. So I was trying to decide between grad school, PhD programs, and a job. And I think partially because that decision factor was in there, I also felt like, it would be kind of strange for me to want to negotiate more after I made that decision. So I didn't negotiate at all. I didn't ask for anything additional. I took the very first offer I was given. It did come with a sign-on bonus, so I'm lucky that worked out for me. But I do kind of look back and think, was that an option that I missed out on? And now that I've only worked for one employer, it's kind of harder to negotiate internally for positions than it is when you're jumping to a new employer. So that's kind of what my experience has been, very limited.
Absolutely. And if anyone else would like to jump in, please feel free. I would just like to say that this is not something that I was personally taught in college. And I feel like that contributes to a lot of the trouble that young people have. I heard that there are negotiating tips that can happen in career centers and stuff like that. But just personally, I think we need a much larger educational background of what doing a day-to-day negotiation is and how to apply to jobs and how to respond to job offers. And I know John Katz, who is raising his hand, has an incredibly unique experience with all of this side, playing both sides.
Yeah, so I have two stories I can share. First one I'll share is a little more straightforward. It's kind of like what we just talked about, the employer-employee relationship. When I first started at Datadog, a part of the negotiating salary was shares in the company, of course. So maybe some of you will, get to a startup one day and you'll have to negotiate shares, which I had to do, which was kind of fun. And I negotiated for 250 shares up front, whereas they were giving regular SDRs about only 50. What I said was that based on previous experience in terms of sales with Blendy, in terms of previous experience with sales and competitions at Bryant University and such, I should demand a higher, if I can't get a higher salary, which what I was requesting, then I should get more shares. And so they decided to honor that, and they saw my worth, basically. And they said, yeah, sure, we'll give you, I think they did 200. I said, well, no, I want 250. They said, okay, we'll have to get it cleared. And yeah, so my thing was, I had other opportunities, quite honestly. And if they weren't willing to give me 250 shares, then you know what? See you later. So, and I kind of just played hardball with them. And I established what my self-worth was, which is what you all should do because you're all amazing at what you do. And play hardball and don't be bashful. You know what I mean? Praise what you've done. Praise what you can do. See what you can offer and bring that to the table and make it known to them. So
All right, yeah, so I got a few stories I can share with you guys. One is work related, and the other one is real estate related for rental situations. So I'll start with the work one. So I was my old company for almost 6 years, and by year four, 4.5, I was noticing that I was worth more. I also made the mistake of not negotiating my starting salary when I first started there. Didn't have necessary skills, I guess, and I didn't really know how to gather information before coming into the negotiating table. That's a very big thing that I learned about that. Do your homework, gather your data, so then you can have comparable numbers. That also requires for you to understand the job and the job description. So that's part of the interview. It's like two-way street kind of thing. But so I didn't do that. So, but then by year four, I was already pretty deep in the company. I was kind of like a linchpin almost. Without me, like taking days off was tough for me because they always needed me, which was good. I didn't know how to portray that in a negotiation tactic, but luckily I had a boss that she became my boss after working with me in the same level for like a year and a half. So we had also a friendly relationship, and she understood that my value was not being seen. I was not getting compensated for what I thought it was and what she thought she was. So that was a positive for me in that situation. Unfortunately, when she went to the higher ups, they disagreed. But that kind of taught me, it was a nice way to spoon feed me onto how to negotiate and how to like talk to people, how to kind of state your worth, and and say, hey, listen, like uh, this is what I'm worth, this is what I'm willing to give. And once the higher ups came back to me and say, we're not willing to do that, I was clear with my boss. I was like, listen, that just means I'm need to have to leave. Like I'm gonna have to leave. I mean, I don't want to do it by burning bridges. I literally was direct with us. Like, I don't want to burn any bridges with you or with the company or anything, but clearly you understand my value. I understand my value. The higher ups don't, unfortunately. What can we do? 6 months later, I got a raise, which was nice, but I still decided to leave because it was more like he will throw you a bone and go from there. It wasn't the right place for me anymore. I still love the company and the people there, but it wasn't the right place. So it just speaks to know your worth and be willing to walk away. When you walk away, though, I learned how to not burn bridges. That even now to this day, people from the old company are keeping in touch with me, emailing me, and they say, hey, whenever you want to come back, let us know. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's pretty fantastic. And this, like, in this day and age too, especially, I feel pretty lucky to have that kind of in my back pocket in case I need to lean on them sometimes. There is a book I actually just got like 3 days ago. Chris Voss. I haven't started reading it yet, but he used to be an FBI negotiator, and I'm looking forward to start it. But it tells you about this negotiating tactics, and you can see him on YouTube as well. I'll get the name of the book and I put it in the chat, but I just wanted to share with you guys that and this is two good stories negotiating. There's been many more that at the store or when you're at farmers markets or when you're at garage sales or yard sales negotiating that you don't get what you want, but luckily that's what it is, Linda. Perfect. Never split the difference. That's exactly the book I got. Yeah, thank you. So and there's good reviews from that, but yeah, those are my stories for now.
Absolutely. And to quickly remind people, please feel free to use the chat. I know we have a really good conversation going in there right now. Oftentimes people show up to this and unfortunately in their work environment, they either can't turn on their camera or they can't participate vocally. So we use the chat a lot to facilitate those conversations. Annie, I would love if you could bring up what you put in chat because I personally cannot really talk about it, but think it is unbelievably important.
Yeah, so I posted in the chat that Mika Brzezinski wrote a book a number of years ago called Know Your Value, where she interviewed a lot of successful women. And the point of the book is really that women tend to undervalue ourselves, and we're less likely to negotiate, we're less likely to ask for what we're worth. And sometimes it's because we're in a man's world, right? And sometimes it's because we don't have the networks that men have had for many years, supporting each other and sort of mentoring each other. I have an experience. I do a lot of consulting work, and a number of years ago, I was asked to be an expert witness in a court case. And I didn't know how much that really paid. I did some Googling to kind of get a general idea. I looked in some books and stuff like that. So when I was negotiating with the law firm, I negotiated what I thought was a really good hourly rate, more than I had ever earned in any other consulting gig. So, you know, I flew down to Dallas to give the deposition. I was getting paid for all the hours of travel and everything. I felt so great. And the female lawyer took me aside before I came back to New York, and she said, "You did a fabulous job." She said, "Next time you should really ask for more money." And I was like, "More money? Really?" And she said, "Yeah, because the other 3 male expert witnesses are making 20% more an hour than you are." And I was like, I just was stunned. And I so appreciated her sharing that with me, because I don't know, I don't know if another male lawyer might have done that, but it was sort of like she was kind of taking me aside and saying, "Sister, ask for more next time because you can afford to." And it was a real wake-up call for me. And I think that, a lot of times we don't negotiate, but I want to tell you that everything is negotiable, and but you have to have confidence and know your value. And I think the people that I know in my life that I've encouraged to go in and negotiate for a position and they don't negotiate, it's because they're afraid that they're not going to get it. And let me tell you, if someone has made you an offer and you come back and say, "Is there room for flexibility? I'd really like X." They're not going to say, "Well, screw you, I'm not going to hire you." Then they're going to come back with another figure maybe, or they'll come back and say, "No, we really can't budge from this," right? But it doesn't hurt to ask. So you should always ask.
Yeah. Hard-earned error on my end. And it really, as a female, sent me back from a salary earning standpoint. So I made a huge industry leap, and I think understanding your industry is very important as you shift. I moved from a daily reporter to working for General Electric. We didn't have salary bands. I didn't even know what a salary band was. I didn't know how I would factor in. All I knew was I was dazzled that I was going to go work for General Electric. And I negotiated looking back at an industry that did not pay well and didn't understand what my earning potential was in a Fortune 50. And I realized about 2 months on the job, I was getting paid 25% less than my male counterpart, because basically I went in uninformed and, wouldn't even, if you're not informed, it's really impossible to negotiate. And so I had to figure out how to make up that delta, and it wasn't going to come in salary. So I made sure that I got and went to conferences that the company paid for, went and spoke at conferences, which I'd never done before. Professional organizations negotiated that this would be advantageous for me to be part of certain professional organizations that had fees. And then when it came down to recognition, I actually realized stock options were going to be a great way also. And it turned out to be prudent at the time in keeping those stock options and getting rid of them at GE when they were at an amazing high. But I really learned you can't look back. You got to learn your industry, understand, and now more than ever, whether it's Glassdoor or doing research on LinkedIn, I mean, you can learn about things like the compensation of a company or an industry. So hard lesson for me, because I realized I could have been way ahead of the pack on my salary, and it just was being uninformed about where I was in my new world.
Absolutely. Something I really also want to touch on is a huge point made by Kelsey, that you also need to understand what's important to you. Negotiations are not always about money. They're not always about salary. I know something that in my first job that was incredibly important is I walked into the room, and as we began the interview, I said, "Hey, I want to be upfront with you in saying I need a flexible work style. I need to be able to work the hours that I'm comfortable. If I have meetings, I'll always go to them. I'll get my work done, but a traditional 9 to 5 does not work for me for at least the next 6 months with stuff I was doing outside of work." And they said, "We're going to take that into consideration, but just so you know, we might offer you the job and say that's not okay." And again, I was just upfront and said, "You can offer me the job. I'm not going to accept it unless it's under these terms." And just realizing that if it's that important to you, you need to be willing to say it, and say it in a way that they know it's that important. Because at the end of the day, a business is a business, and the job of the majority of the businesses in a capitalist market is to make money. And if they can pay you less, they're probably going to pay you less unless you ask and stand up for yourself. And that's a hard thing to swallow, but it's true. Is you're very rarely going to walk into a performance review and have them give you the highest salary in the salary band that you're able to get unless you ask and unless you say, I know I'm worth this. Maple, I'd actually love to throw it over to you because working in real estate, I imagine your salary is not entirely base and some of it's built off of commission. And I was wondering how you negotiate commission.
Oh, yeah, I'm not based on, so for my salary and my compensation total is like 50-50. So we have a lot of market data. So during my negotiation, I pretty much know what the market comp is for for my position that I was looking for. And during my negotiation, I think it's clear just to list out bullet points what my worth and send that off and making a formal pitch and to kind of present my idea. And I was able to get my base salary a little higher. And yeah, so that's pretty much, it's really, there's a lot of data for my job, so it's much easier. Like Glassdoor and all that, it shows a lot of market compensation, so that really helped my negotiation. So for you guys really researching to your industry and kind of get an idea of comp, and yeah, that was my advice.
To Maple's point, bullet points are extremely helpful when you're trying to summarize your worth to them. And I believe it's a little easier to summarize what service you're willing to give that person at that at that fee level, if you will. And I've incorporated the practice to different fee tiers get more service. So the higher fee you pay, the more attention you will get. Obviously, like it's a gray area, so you have to kind of be careful to remain compliant in the industry you're in. But I recently, I just remembered the story. I had to tell somebody no. Like that and that fee, like, and I would love to work with you, but no, I can't. This is just too low. It wouldn't cover my cost, and I was honest. I have a cost as well. Can't do it. But if this in the future changes, let me know. And this person has been calling me lately for investment advice. And the first day I gave it to him just to kind of cool his mind down, keep the relationship going. But after the second, third phone call, I was like, if you want advice, go talk to your current advisor. Like it's becoming a liability for me, or bring your assets over to me. We can work together. This is the fee you're missing out on just because you want it. I said it in way better words, but to summarize, just because you want a cheaper fee, you're getting a crappy service. Like it's the value you pay. That's the important thing to focus on, not the price. And I think Warren Buffett said it best. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. You want to highlight the value, and once you do that, the price is pretty easy to fall on.
Absolutely. And John, did you want to jump in? I see that you're unmuted.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I always harp on this, but you really got to know the manager, because if you're going to renegotiate successfully after your job. It just makes it so much easier if you're straight up. Every day it's basically your selling points. You finally reach the point where you say, hey, this wasn't even being done in the department. We've taken this on. I've kind of coordinated this. I had this one patch where I think I got 30-something% rate, 3 different raises, 30% over like 16 months. But I had to build that relationship. I had to document what we were doing to get to that point. And he finally reached a point where they couldn't do anymore, and I had to go to another job, and I never burned the bridge because we had that relationship established, and he knew there wasn't enough challenge in the department. I was going to go on, but it worked out well. The other side of that, I worked for a nonprofit. I mentioned this in a chat. It was over in New York State, very limited budget. You got 3% every year if you had a pulse, December 31st. So everyone got the same raise, and it was terrible. And it was challenging as I cleaned up things. And then they kind of built perks in. My boss knew I was going for MBA. So she said, well, come in a couple minutes early, just photocopy your books, your work, and just start doing that once you're done, So it worked out for a while. So, you can do that. You can flex time whenever they realize, as long as you're doing a good job, they'll make, try to keep you happy, kind of keep you motivated, at least to a certain point, And on the manager side, I've always realized that I've hired people that were way beyond what they were going to do. And I've always said, just get as much out of them, let them learn a lot, build a good relationship. And, if you get 3 years out of them, it's a victory, and that's, you got to realize that, And again, it's not burning a bridge. I'm not cynical. I'm not, I don't hate any of these people because they left me. I knew they were going to, and I wanted them to succeed.
Absolutely. And I've talked to a few hiring managers at General Dynamics that echo what you're saying, that getting 3 years out of someone new is amazing. And if you can hold on to a new person for 3 years, that's huge. As it is 12:57, I do want to quickly mention a few things. First and foremost, as always, the conversation has a soft stop at 1 o'clock, but I will be facilitating the conversation as long as it continues. After 1 o'clock, we usually get a bit more casual. Everyone can unmute. I'll stop the recording so you can say whatever you want with no repercussion. And I'd also like to turn your attention towards the chat, where I'm going to be dropping a feedback poll. We put these on because we want to help, and we can't help if we don't get feedback. So it's really, really important to receive the feedback, to receive what we hear from you guys about what's good about this, about what can change about this, and we want to hear it all. So we really appreciate if you could take the time to do the quick poll. And as always, if you need to drop off at 1, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for coming. And we can keep it going as long as people want to keep it going.
Thanks for listening. If you missed the last Culture Chat, be sure to look out for our October events and visit us at dle.dulye.com to learn about all of our great virtual programming and development opportunities.